Welcome to another episode of Altitude Advantage. I am your host and team reporter, Elisa Hernandez, and sitting across from me is our lead writer for DenverBroncos.com, Aric DiLalla. The Broncos are headed on the road for their first primetime game of the season, taking on the New Orleans Saints. The first time they're facing the Saints since 2020, and the first time they're facing them in New Orleans since 2016. But I can't do all the talking. I have to check in with you. Hello, how are you? Are you ready for this primetime game on Thursday?
I'm good. I'm ready to go. You can talk more if you want. I'll just sit back and relax and enjoy this show. I normally talk too much, so I think that was nice. I can let you just keep going if you want. Yeah, 2016 was the last time they were there. Obviously, very memorable game. The Justin Simmons, Will Parks game, if you will. That was my only time to the Superdome.
Oh, wow. Big homecoming. Your fans should be very, very excited for this.
Yeah, Aric hasn't been to New Orleans in a while. Yeah, that was obviously a thrilling game. The Broncos, I remember Demaryius Thomas caught a touchdown pass, kind of high-pointed it out of the air. And then the Saints led this late comeback, and Drew Brees scores a touchdown, and you think, oh, man, this one's over in the Saints' favor. And then Justin Simmons jumps over the line of scrimmage, blocks the extra point. Will Parks returns it all the way down to the side, all the way down the field for a 2-point conversion. I don't know why he was so close to the sideline, but he was wearing white shoes that day, so they counted him as in. I think he was in. It was an electric moment. One of my favorite moments, really, covering this team in my 9 years now, covering the Broncos. But I know Sean Payton has mentioned that play several times since he's taken over as head coach of the Broncos. But hopefully the Broncos can go down there and repeat history in terms of getting the win. It is a big one for this team as they look to get to 4-3. Try to shake off the loss to the Chargers on a short week. Obviously, a lot of factors, a lot of things to watch. It's Sean Payton's homecoming to New Orleans. The Saints are pretty banged up. Bo Nix versus Spencer Rattler, two rookie quarterbacks. A lot to dive into, a lot to look at with this matchup. But yeah, excited to go down. It's a loud stadium. It's a fun stadium to see a game at, and excited to get down there.
Yeah, a couple of the guys mentioned in the locker room just the noise level. So it's a couple of players going back, as well as, again, head coach Sean Payton returning to New Orleans. The Broncos actually have a interesting record. I looked it up, 9-3 overall in this series versus the Saints, and actually 4-1 record at home when they're playing in New Orleans. So that's what I thought was an interesting fact. It's a long history. It's interesting when you see these matchups because they're not necessarily direct rivals or anything like that. But I feel like when you have these games, it's kind of fun to see how each team has kind of shaken out over it.
Yeah, and certainly the Saints were, Sean Payton helped change the culture there when he was in New Orleans. He helped change the way that organization is viewed. They hadn't had a lot of success before, obviously. Yeah. Peyton Manning's father, Archie, had some great years down there and was a great player. But Sean Payton, Drew Brees, they helped change the culture down there. And so, again, we'll talk about Sean going down there. But yeah, the Broncos, they need to get a win. They hope to get a win. And in just a couple days here, we'll be down there ready to go.
Yeah, in the words of head coach Sean Payton, he hates losing, and this game is all about him being the head coach of the Denver Broncos and playing the best football they can on this short week, again, coming after that loss. But one of the things that I like coming to, especially on this version of the podcast, is the YouTube comments. I know that's your favorite part, deep diving into the abyss of the YouTube comments to kind of see what's there. So what shook out?
That's right. There's a lot of comments.
Oh,
we of course have our Thursday preview show, which is what you're listening to right now on Wednesday because the game's on Thursday.
Yeah.
See if you can follow that. It's been a crazy day. We're getting all sorts of content on. My hair looks terrible.
What?
It's falling all over the place. It's a disaster. But yeah, let's read a few comments from each of those shows. This is from the Thursday show. Retro Alex says, Bo Nix, you can tell, is more comfortable than people give him credit for. He's becoming more aggressive down the field. He's hard to sack. Great podcast. Keep going. Coach Kevin kills it. I don't know what you're killing, Kevin. I have hope. We're a really talented young team. I think we'll be a real threat in the next few years. Okay, I like that. NorCal Mac, are they comparing the first 5 games of 2015 to the first 5 games of this season as a metric to say this defense is better?
Not better.
That is. We were comparing the first 5 games because that's what the stats are. I'm not saying this is as good of a defense as 2015. Just pointing out numbers.
Numbers don't lie.
Numbers don't lie. People lie. Numbers don't lie. They don't lie. Sorry. Devin2719 says, anyone think Denver should be buyers for a tight end before the trade deadline? We'll get into some more trade talk, I think, as we get along in the season. But I do think that's an interesting point, and I've seen a lot of it on Twitter. Do the Broncos go after a receiver? Do they go after a tight end? Some of it, I imagine, will depend on how do they fare over the next few weeks. But also, this is a team that is kind of in the midst of their building, right? And so you've got to be kind of careful with how much draft capital you give up. Are you trying to, like what is the goal here? Are you trying to go all out this year? Can you make a move that maybe doesn't impact your future, the standing of the team or the roster foundation? So it'll be interesting, not just for the tight end position, but anywhere really. Like, what are the Broncos looking to do at the trade deadline? If they keep winning, it'll be particularly interesting. Certainly the Broncos in previous years had been sellers. You keep winning, I imagine you wouldn't be sellers, but it's hard to always know.
Yeah. Gotta look at the bigger picture.
Exactly. Yeah, we talked about that the other day, right? Like, this is partially about this year. It's partially about making sure you're well prepared moving forward as well. Kiss-a-me fish fry.
I like that name.
Speaking of Eliza, because
I feel like you pronounce it Eliza.
No,
do they really spell it with a Z?
Eliza, yeah.
Oh, no, that's Eliza. Elisa, people. Elisa.
Well, I think that maybe kiss-a-me fish fry, which I feel like I need to say in like an Italian pizzeria, like kiss-a-me fish fry. I'm Italian, I can say it. Speaking of Eliza, can y'all dress up as Eliza and Darwin for Halloween? Is that like a wild Thornberry thing?
That's a Thornberry, yeah.
Doesn't that guy have red hair? Like crazy red hair?
I'm pretty sure Darwin's the monkey.
Oh, boy.
I think.
Wow.
I haven't seen that show in a while, so I think.
There's a monkey in that show?
Yes, he's very intellectually smart.
Oh, Nigel is who I'm thinking of.
Nigel's the dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not dressing up as Nigel, and I'm not dressing up as a chimpanzee. I appreciate the offer. Ryan, are you going to dress up as Eliza
Thornberry? I mean, I have the freckles. I don't have red hair, though.
You just dye it.
Orange.
Think about it.
I'll think about it.
Ryan Halifax. I'm glad I paused because I almost said Ryan Hall Fax. Ryan Halifax. 2744. Let's go Broncos from Syracuse. Love the new host. She's amazing.
Aw, thank you.
It's great. Oh, here we go. From J. Prez Bronc.
I feel like you're excited to read this based on, here we go. You were like enough with the niceties.
That's like, good.
Let's see.
That's good awareness from you. Best football movie of all time. What do you think?
Ooh. See, Remember the Titans is my go-to.
Okay.
I quote that, always never forget that Ryan Gosling was a complete liability.
He was. He's scrawny in that movie. Scrawny.
I'm like, yeah, you better say yours.
I'm gonna say mine.
Huh?
I watched Little Giants recently for the first time in a long time. That's really good.
Yeah.
Friday Night Lights, the movie, is elite. But Jerry Maguire, I think, is the best football movie.
You gotta say it.
You had me at hello.
That one you got. You gotta say it louder.
Yeah, or Show Me the Money.
Yeah.
Is that more iconic than You Had Me from Hello?
Yes, and bear in mind in the comments, make sure you agree with me, because Show Me the Money, you got
That's true.
Come on, it's like, come on, Jerry, say it, and then
Rod Tidwell.
Show me the money.
That's true.
All right, show me the comments.
Way back in the day, there was a meme that I think Von Miller put out of John Elway's face was photoshopped on one thing and his face was on the other, and it was Show Me the Money. I didn't engage with that back in the day, but I feel like enough time has passed. It's been 10 years. Okay. J. Prez Bronc, he says his ranking is Friday Night Lights, number 1, Any Given Sunday, number 2, number 3, The Replacements. It's a good movie.
That is a good movie. Is Remember the Titans not on that list?
Honorable mention, Remember the Titans.
Honorable mention? I'll give you Any Given Sunday. That's a great movie. And Jerry Maguire. But Remember the Titans has to be up there.
I used to be able to do that whole Al Pacino speech by memory. Not anymore.
I mean, there's so many speeches from Remember the Titans you can do.
That's true. The Greenbrier was kind of felt like that. Glee Wolf 88 says defense nickname Brainstorm, Orange Squash, Bronco Bullies, Mile Higher Than You Are, Mile High Bullies. I think some of these need work.
Mile Higher Than You Are is my vote.
Glee Wolf, I appreciate your your ability and your willingness to chime in, but need some work.
I will say that a lot of the players, they would not. I think they're thinking of one because we've asked them and they're just like, we can't tell you guys.
I don't think you can give yourself a nickname. I don't like that. I guess someone's got to give you a nickname.
Maybe they don't have one. They're just telling us that to kind of hold us off.
They're like, enough.
Yeah.
Monica, XO, something else, Ayala, 9249. There's a lot of letters here in a row that are hard to read. Hey, guys, love watching on YouTube. Good info and entertaining. Aric, good job. Shout out to Elisa. Spelled your name wrong.
Hey,
LA love Harbor area. I don't know what that means.
Hey.
Bronco country. Oh, I'm not going to read the rest of that. Random question. This is from
I'm going to need to see that after the show.
This is from Broncos Football Junkie. Random question. What is something you believed as a kid / young adult that today seems outrageous? Remember, this is a family podcast.
You go first.
Something I believed as a young adult / kid that I now think is outrageous. I think when you're a kid, you're like, adults can do whatever they want, and like you've got all this free time, and man, I sometimes wish you just had the ability to like be a child and go take a nap. I feel
like naps are more crucial as an adult than a child.
I saw a good meme that was like, if I was an unemployed 3-year-old, I simply wouldn't spend all my time like screaming and complaining. Now that I know that. So
that's actually a good one.
Apologies to our 3-year-old audience.
Yeah, that's fair. I concur with that.
Dominic Jaramillo, I think now becoming a frequent commenter for homegirl Alice. I think that's you. Alice, that's a
Wonderland?
Let's go Dodgers and let's go Lakers.
Hey,
right, let's
go.
Be careful here.
I don't know about Alice, but I have a friend named Alice. She's actually a huge Broncos fan. So shout out to Alice Mitchell.
Okay. And then from the Monday show, Quentin Caldwell, 4302. Don't play Pat on Thursday. I don't care if he can. I want him fully healed for the next game against the Panthers. We'll talk about Pat. We'll talk about this defense. As we're recording this, Pat has not. He's been estimated as a non-participant on Monday and Tuesday because it's an estimated injury report. Obviously, in the concussion protocol, we'll see what happens there. I don't know if Pat could play. I'd want him to play, but I understand the point. I understand wanting him to be healthy and ready to go. Anthony Lucero, 1910. I'm just going to read this. I don't know what it's about, but he says, "Well said, Aric."
Wow.
I assume that's about me telling people to just chill out a little bit.
Maybe. Yeah. Did you write that from your burner?
Or? One of them, yeah. D-Rock7237. Broncos country maniacs. Let's step away from the ledge and tranquilo.
Tranquilo.
Tranquilo. I'm trying my best here. Just breathe. We're 3-3. Don't worry. I know we have PTSD from years past, but I'm just like, sometimes I start reading and then I'm like, what are they saying here? We're the ragtag bunch of rabid dogs. Let's have some faith and trust the process.
Trust the process. I like that. Trust the process. You said that on Monday's show. You're like, just calm down. Trust
That's true.
it.
I told people. That's nice that they're listening. A Bulwark Tie says, heads up and keep your eyes on the ball. Go Broncos. It's true. That one's not very nice. Quentin Caldwell, wow, thanks for all the comments, Quentin. People have instant gratification desires, learn patience. I think that's true.
That's very true.
Good point. Show more replies. Not going to do that. Anyway, that's all I got. Thank you for commenting. Please leave your comments, leave your questions.
Yeah.
JPrez Bronc, I like your questions because they inspire discussion.
Yes.
Need more like that. But yeah, comment on the official YouTube page of the Broncos and we will read them right here on the air.
Yeah. And the ones that we don't, we will talk about them after the show in secret. Because
in secret.
There's a few that I'm like, what do you mean? But again, we will switch gears now to this matchup. It's a very short week for the Broncos. They're coming off of that loss to the Chargers. And after the game, everyone was very focused on the Saints and just understanding that this is the best time to kind of flush this loss out, get it out of our system, move on to the next game. Interesting enough, the Saints are also looking to do the same coming off that loss to the Buccaneers. Now, you have Bo Nix going against Spencer Rattler. I'm going to look at his stats really quick. He was 22 for 40, 243 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, 5 sacks for a loss of 21 yards for Spencer against that Buccaneers defense when they're putting 51 on that on that final score, which is crazy to think. But looking at this matchup with Bo Nix and Spencer Rattler, what are you seeing kind of from your perspective going into this matchup?
Yeah, I think this one is interesting because it's the first rookie versus rookie matchup the Broncos have had this year. And obviously there's some other ones around the NFL that are coming up. I know Jaden Daniels versus Caleb Williams just got flexed into the afternoon spot, I think in week 8. So that's coming up. But this is kind of a, like, if you want to put it this way, an apples to apples comparison of like, here's what a rookie quarterback looks like versus another rookie quarterback. And it's a rookie quarterback making his 7th start versus 2nd start. So granted, that's a little bit different. But it is just naturally because of the fact that they're both rookies, there's going to be comparisons made, right? And like, how does Bo play versus Spencer Rattler? What does Bo do well that Spencer Rattler doesn't do as well? Or what are some elements of Spencer Rattler's game that maybe are different than Bo's game? And certainly when you've had the opportunity to talk to all of these guys and evaluate them, there is just this natural comparison that's going to happen. And Sean Payton and Joe Lombardi both talked Tuesday about the fact that the Broncos really like Spencer Rattler. They flew out, had a private workout. I think they went to his pro day. Sean Payton said they did the steak dinner, the whole 9 yards. Joe Lombardi said they really liked him, and they were surprised at how far he fell in the draft. And obviously at a certain point, the Saints said, hey, we got to take this guy. Spencer Rattler, as Sean Payton said, is similar to Bo Nix in that they both faced some adversity. They both transferred. Bo from Auburn to Oregon, obviously, and then Spencer Rattler was at Oklahoma, was kind of viewed as like he's going to take Caleb Williams' spot. Didn't quite work out that way. He ends up going to South Carolina and having some success his last couple of years there. And so I am interested to see how do these rookies play. I think for Bo, and I asked him this on Tuesday, my days are all mixed up, right? Because like Wednesday is when he normally talks.
Say like the other day.
Yeah, the other day. That's good. I talked to Bo at some point and asked him, like, do you see progress from week 1 and 2 to now? Because I think that is one of the questions that Broncos fans are freaking out about online is, has there been enough progress? Have you seen enough from Bo?
Yeah.
And he acknowledged, Cortland Sutton acknowledged, there are places where, he's making throws that in week 1 or week 2 he wouldn't have made. And I think that, for example, the throw to Josh Reynolds against the Raiders, I think the touchdown throw to Troy Franklin, certainly the touchdown throw against the Chargers to Cortland Sutton, I don't think he's making those throws week 1 or week 2. I think you're also seeing, Bo not make the same mistakes that he made early in the season.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, the throw to Marvin Mims, I think he would tell you a little bit high, needs to be a better throw, but decision-wise, Marvin Mims is open, probably a big gain if you can connect on that. Whereas you look back to week 1, for example, in Seattle, or week 2 against Pittsburgh, and it was more the decision-making or like, where are you going with that ball? I think we're seeing less of that from Bo in terms of where are you going with the football. So that's encouraging. I think in this game, you want to see that more and more just in terms of this is a Saints defense that obviously did allow 51 points to the Bucs. There should be a chance here to maybe get things going on the ground. And we'll talk about this more in terms of the starting fast, but the Bucs ran for a bunch of yards. I think, more than 300 rushing yards? Is that right?
Let's see. 277 total. Sean Tucker had 136 and a touchdown.
Man. So
they had 2 rushing touchdowns, though.
So we'll see. Can they help? Like, can they get the rushing game going, which helps set up some play action? I feel like that's where Bo could really thrive. Of get this run game going. Is it with Javonte? Is it with Audric Estime, Jaleel, and then let Bo kind of make those plays? And that's what they did against Tampa, right? Is they set it up with the run. They make these plays down the field. You get Bo going, then he looks comfortable. Again, we'll talk more about the quick start in a second, but. The other thing with Bo is that I think he looks at the film and says there's still areas where he can be better. And Cortland Sutton said that Bo will come to him on a Monday after a game and say, hey, did you see that on film? Like, I saw this. We should have hit this. We'll hit this next time.
Yeah.
And I think for a rookie quarterback, the fact that he's seeing that already is encouraging.
Yeah, and just being comfortable to go to your receiver and just kind of say what you're seeing, because that's also part of the kind of the idea when you're coming into a new team, you're the rookie quarterback. He has no fear when it comes to just going up to his teammates, whether it's to get better or to ask for help or to kind of figure out what they can kind of fix for the next game. I think that's one of the biggest things that Bo Nix has really kind of shown his teammates and why they really trust his leadership and really trust him when they say that he's a winner. That's what he does. And just looking at the starting fast side of things, we just got a little on the offense, but before we get back to that, let's touch on the defense a little bit, specifically on the run game. Obviously, in that game versus the Chargers, J.K. Dobbins really went off. He had that really long 20-yard run, I believe. And then I believe he was 96 yards, 25 carries, though, for 96 yards. He had that rushing touchdown. Nick Bonito, after the game, said that they need to start fast, and they didn't start with that urgency that they feel they need to do. Alvin Kamara against the Buccaneers was held to 40 yards in that game. That's something you want to see replicated again, because with a rookie quarterback, you assume that they're going to run the ball. And this defense wants to make sure that, especially a guy like Alvin Kamara, does not get going. So what do you kind of see as the keys for this team to start fast?
Yeah, I think that, and we'll get to kind of the Surtain element of this, because I think that's part of it. I just think there has to be, like, somebody's got to make a play early. I think you've got to be dialed into, like, what the script is. We talked just for a second about Rattler. I think the other thing with him is that you mentioned the interceptions, you mentioned the sacks. Like, Rattler, from watching, just kind of, it was like on Red Zone as we were getting ready for the Broncos game. Like, this guy has an arm. He can throw it. He is going to make he had a touchdown throw that you're like, man, how did he get that ball there? But I also think with a rookie and as much pressure as you've been able to bring, like, there should be the opportunity to get sacks. There should be the opportunity to maybe he throws you one or two and you get a key takeaway, a key turnover. But I think you're right when you talk about the run game. Like, it's got to start up front. Zach Allen, DJ Jones, JFM, the inside linebackers, Cody Barton, Justin Cernod.
Yeah.
It's got to be about putting this run game, like, making that the focus so that you're in these third and longs if you're Spencer Rattler. And granted, I know that Herbert made a bunch of plays last week in third and long. That's kind of an outlier. I don't expect the Broncos to have that type of third down performance again. But you've got to make things tough on a rookie quarterback, and you can't allow Spencer Rattler to live in 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3.
Yeah.
And I know that we talk about this every week, really, of, like, that's the key against quarterbacks, but, like, that's just because it is. And that's the way that the Broncos want to play, is putting pressure on quarterbacks in these key third downs. Obviously, offensively, they're pretty banged up. We'll have to see how the injury report kind of shapes up on Wednesday, but Olave's been in concussion protocol. Shaheed is apparently dealing with a knee injury. I saw this tweet from, I think it was Nick Underhill, who covers the Saints, and it was like their initial starting lineup on offense, and it was just like red lines through everybody. So certainly they've got some guys that are being called into bigger roles. But defensively it starts with running the football well. Offensively, in terms of starting fast, which is just as important, if not more so, because also offensively, if you start fast, just as the Broncos were kind of put in this situation against the Chargers, if you start fast and you go up 7-0, and they have a rookie quarterback, like, do they start to panic, or do they get away from what they want to do, which is probably run the football and stay in the game and not make Spencer Rattler take too many chances? And so if you go up early, it can it can put the game in your hands. And I think you've said this before, right? Like, you can dictate the way the game is played. But again, that starts, we heard a lot of it because the Broncos have not done well on third down early this year, but it starts on 1st and 2nd down. You've got to put yourself in 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3. And what you can't have, because it happened last week a number of times, is the Broncos got to 2nd and 1 or 3rd and 1, and then boom, there's a penalty, and you're in 3rd and 6.
Yeah.
And especially on the road, dealing with that noise, that's going to be something to watch. But certainly, and granted, last week, at least, I thought that the Broncos had chances early. Like, Marvin Mims goes up and makes that catch in the first half, or Javonte Williams doesn't lose the football, or Bo Nix has a better throw to Marvin Mims on that first drive. Like, then we're probably talking about a different game, at least in terms of how it unfolds. So part of it is, again, run game, put yourself in 3rd and manageables, but then also just, you need guys, Bo and the guys around him included, to just make plays and get yourself on the right side of this. Cause I think we said it yesterday when we talked, like, living in games where you're down 10-0 and you've got to come back, that's a hard life for anybody. And especially when you've got a rookie quarterback, you don't want to make that the reality or the norm. And so I think when it comes to starting fast, there's got to be this emphasis. And listen, I get that sometimes you're feeling out the defense, but at the very least, like, even if you don't score, string a couple first downs together, punt the ball away, and flip the field so that you're now kind of, if it's going to be a field position battle, have that be on your terms as well. It doesn't always have to be like score a touchdown on the first drive, but can you at least like back them up so that, and obviously avoid turnover so that they're not in your side of the field. But that's some of the stuff I look at in terms of what do the Broncos need to do to get off to a better start.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at, we have 7 penalties for 37 yards, and the 37 yards doesn't sound like too crazy, but when you look back at when they came at certain points in the game, it was really detrimental to really stalling out that offense. And Bo Nix really talked about, this short week and said it's a challenge, but the challenge that he's excited for, to really kind of cram everything in, like you're studying and practicing, kind of get ready to go for this game. This is first time playing on a Thursday night, I believe. So that there's also that adjustment for a rookie as well. Like, you have that short week. You don't have that when you're in college. And so I think he's really kind of excited to kind of get this milestone almost under his belt, because for a rookie, it is a milestone to play on a primetime game. And Cortland Sutton spoke about that too, in terms of, he understands the storylines going into this matchup with, Sean Payton returning, a couple other former players returning. But he said, that aside, our goal is to get this win and get our 4th win and go to 4-3. And that is the focal point. That is what they're looking to do. They're not really looking at the other implications and emotions that kind of come into it. And again, that really does tie into the entire starting fast. And I feel with Bo and Court having that connection there is really important, especially when you do have these key guys that are lost. You spoke on the Saints injuries, but looking at the Broncos, they also have some key injuries as well to some top key players. Yeah, definitely. And as we're recording this, like we said, we don't know what Pat Surtain's final status is. He did not practice, or was estimated rather, as a non-participant on Monday and Tuesday, which you'd imagine is going to make it tough for him to play. But especially with concussions, I never want to speculate on that. I'm not an expert in the protocol. Seems like I'm always learning new things about like how quickly people advance or not. And obviously, like one of the commenters said, Pat's health is the most important thing. So when he's ready to play, I'm sure he'll play. And I do want to get to that in just a second. But the last thing on the starting fast is I think for Bo in this offense, it can be good that it's Thursday night, because as Sean Payton said, and we talked about this Monday, you're not installing like a bunch of new things. Yeah. There might be a wrinkle here or there, but your focus really is, what do we do well? What do we know by heart? And I said this Monday, which is just, I guess, yesterday as we're recording this, 2 days when you're listening to this. It's been, I don't even know what's happening. Years. Yeah, that's true. But like, that's often where you see rookies succeed, is or new quarterbacks in a new system. Like I said, this a 2-minute drill, those sorts of things where you know stuff by heart. And so maybe not having to worry about all the rest of it, and just like, here are the things that we do really well. Maybe that can help Bo in this offense. But you mentioned defensively. I think a lot of it's the same thing. Like, what do you do well? Vance Joseph said Tuesday that there's a benefit in knowing a guy is not going to be out there if he's not out there, right? And on Sunday, the Broncos had to change on the fly. Pat Surtain is a big part of this defense. He's obviously integral to everything that they do. And so when you're trying in the moment to figure out, okay, who do we want to move to the boundary? Who do we want to move inside? Yeah. How does this change who we've got matching up? And given that happened on the first defensive play of the game, I believe, when Pat went out. First series, first third down. And who knows, maybe they were going to have him shadow a certain guy. Maybe they were going to have him stay on the boundary. Maybe they had a certain plan for how that impacts coverages. But certainly if he's out there and Herbert can't look to a certain side of the field, you think maybe the rush has an extra second to get there, which on a lot of those plays would have been enough on some of those third downs. So certainly it has an impact. And the Broncos defense is, I mean, quite frankly, they'd tell you this. They're not as good when Surtain is not out there, because he's arguably the best defensive player in the league, right? Like, of course they're not going to be as good when he's not out there. And he's such a big leader on this team. And even Jonathan Cooper has said it before, like him being out there makes us better. And when he plays his game, it makes our job easier. And vice versa. Pat has said the same thing about his defensive lineup. Just like when they're able to get after the quarterback, it frees me up to have a little more fun out there and kind of really get the job done. So they do complement each other. So when you lose a guy like that, a captain like that, it does hurt, especially when you're just reeling off of Alex Singleton being out and really kind of adjusting to that next man up mentality.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, when that happens in the middle of the game, it's tricky. And we saw, I think, in the second half, the Broncos figured it out a little bit. And we said, who knows how much the Chargers were pushing late, but certainly the defense got some key stops. I think now that you have a couple days to say, okay, if Pat doesn't play, here's our plan against the Saints, and here's what we do with Riley Moss and Jaquan McMillan and Levi Wallace and, Damari Mathis has been practicing. Does he get activated? Like, you have a little bit more time to put together this plan. And granted, knock on wood, that doesn't stop somebody else from getting injured or being pulled from the game early in this week's matchup. But I think when it's a guy like Surtain who's so critical to what you're doing, and especially after I saw the halftime adjustments and how much more effective they were in the second half, when you can say, okay, here's 3 days to Vance Joseph to figure out how do we want to get ready for this Saints team, I think you're going to see a defensive performance Thursday, hopefully, knock on wood, that's a lot closer to what we've seen the first 5 weeks of the season compared to week 6.
Yeah. And talking to the guys after that loss against the Chargers, you could just tell, like, they were well aware of the situation, and Nick Bonito called it out. Like, there's self-inflicted wounds. Like, there's stuff that we did to ourselves, certain plays that we know we could do better at. And they obviously knew that J.K. Dobbins and Justin Herbert were going to be threats. And the fact that they weren't able to really kind of contain that, it wasn't like we couldn't do it. It's just like we didn't play our game. And to your point, we had talked about when you're playing from behind, you have to adjust to now the opposing team's play and kind of like their tempo versus playing it at the speed that you want to go to. So that was a really big thing, especially for Nick. I believe he had his 4th sack in a row. So there were some positive things in the second half. You definitely saw those adjustments and the way they were able to kind of come out with that urgency and that efficiency to really get after the quarterback. I think they kept the Chargers, 3 points in the second half, if that's right. So, I mean, obviously, the Broncos want to get this bad taste out of their mouths. The Saints do as well. And this is a big game. And talking about the big storylines, we do have to touch on one of the biggest, which is Sean Payton, head coach Sean Payton, returning to New Orleans for the first time as head coach of the Denver Broncos. He's emphasized all week, I think you called it on the Mondays, like warm and fuzzies and all that stuff. It's going to pass eventually. But he hates losing. He wants to be very clear. His focus is getting a win as head coach of the Denver Broncos. Everything else is going to be great, family, friends, nostalgia, but the mission is clear. He wants to win. But what does this moment mean in his return to New Orleans, where he spent obviously his career as a head coach and really kind of made his impact on this league?
Yeah, I think you saw a little bit more Tuesday in terms of what this means to him. And I know, and I completely believe that the focus is still on getting a win.
Yeah.
He said it, I think, that his message to the team on Tuesday morning when they met was this is about going and getting our 4th win. That's all that this is about.
Yeah.
And I think Camp Jordan down in New Orleans was saying Sean Payton knows that we're struggling, and I think he said he can smell the blood in the water. Sean wants to come down there and get a win. They know how Sean Payton is wired.
Yeah.
They know they've got to be ready. I think I saw Mickey Loomis, the GM of the Saints, did an interview where he said Sean Payton's going to come down there and be ready to go. He's going to pull out all the stops. We got to be ready for that.
Yeah.
And certainly that's the number one priority, right? Is the win. And again, we said it on Monday. If you go down there for a reunion and you lose, it's not quite. It doesn't it hits diff in a bad way.
Yeah.
And so that's first and foremost is the win is important. But I do think, and I appreciated this, he talked Tuesday in depth about what he enjoyed about the city of New Orleans and coaching down there, and you could just tell how much it meant to him, especially early when he and Mickey Loomis got there and Drew Brees is getting there, and they're figuring out what is this team going to be. He said they didn't really know exactly how successful they were going to be, but then you add in Hurricane Katrina and people recovering from that, and Drew Brees talked about it in a video for the Saints this week about they were an inspiration. They helped people get through that you might have been dealing with just unimaginable loss, but the Saints every week could like provide an outlet. And like when the Saints won, things looked just a little bit better on Monday. And so it was nice hearing Sean Payton talk about that. Obviously, he talked a little bit about his relationship with Drew Brees. He said Drew Brees intentionally picked this game to go into the Saints Hall of Fame. He wanted Sean there, and Sean is subtle, and it's like if you're not paying attention, you can miss it. But he was like, that meant something. And so,
he got warm and fuzzy.
You could tell
he got the warm and fuzzies.
You could tell this meant something to Sean. But again, it's about going down there and getting a win. And I do think it sounded like talking to Cortland Sutton or Bo. They know that it means something to him, but he hasn't made it about like, go win this for me.
Yeah.
Like they just want to get a win. And I think
us. Like it's very like that team focus. It's not me, it's us.
Yeah, absolutely. And like there's, as we said Monday, there's a bunch of guys going back, whether it's Joe Lombardi, Pete Carmichael, Zach Streif.
Vance Joseph, actually. I learned that.
He's from New Orleans.
Yeah. He said he left when he was 17.
Yeah, he grew up there.
Funny story, because someone asked Vance Joseph, they were like, "Oh, like has Sean told you any good restaurants?" And he was like, "Hold on. I'm from New Orleans.
I know the restaurants."
He was like, "I know the restaurants very well." But it is a mini homecoming for a lot of this team. But you said it, like it's gonna be even better homecoming if they're able to fly back with a W.
Yeah, and then like Lil Jordan Humphrey, Malcolm Roach, Chris Banjo on the staff played there for 3 years. I mean, there's, as it's been well documented, Cody Rager in the front office, like there's a lot of guys that were in New Orleans. And so Will Lutz, like the Saints logo is painted on the field this week, just as it is for a lot of the road games that the Broncos have. But it's like a bunch of guys are probably looking down at that this week and being like, I remember this. I'm used to this. Probably feels a little bit more normal than having like the Chiefs logo or the Raiders logo painted on your field.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited from an environment standpoint to see what it's like. Obviously, the Drew Brees, anytime you have a guy like that going into your Hall of Fame, like it juices you up. If you're a player on that team, the Broncos talked about, hey, we wanted to win when it's alumni weekend.
Yeah.
We saw the Falcons say after Matt Ryan went into their Ring of Fame, like that win was for Matt Ryan, right? Like it's going to be the same way for the Saints. And I think in a lot of ways, this Saints team is banged up. But the fact that there's like this emotion with Sean coming back and Drew Brees going in the Hall of Fame, like it's almost this great equalizer. And like anybody out there is going to play
for that honor, for that, like that, you know,
they're just going to play their tails off. And Sean talks about like that Monday Night Football game against the Falcons with the block punt, and like people still talk about that in terms of being a magical Saints moment. And like I'm sure the Saints want to turn this into the next
moment.
Great moment. And so the Broncos, from an energy standpoint, they have to be ready to go. They have to be willing to match that. That place is going to be juiced. It was loud in there the last time I was there for like a Sunday afternoon kick at 1 p.m. or 4:20. I can't remember exactly what time they kicked, but like that was just a game. And the Broncos were maybe 5-2 at that point. The Saints were about the same. Like it was a decently important game, but it wasn't like
it was early on in the season.
It wasn't like this.
Yeah.
And so that place is going to be out of its mind. Excited to see that energy, but Broncos have to be ready to, and we talked about starting fast, like you've got to be able to match that energy immediately, because the one thing you don't want to do is like go behind early or, they get a quick turnover and score or,
you got to do what you can to take the crowd out of it as quickly.
Spencer Rattler goes out and throws a bomb and like, and then you really let the crowd get into it and you're down 7-0, you're down 10. That's going to put you in a tough spot. So, it's a really important game for this Broncos team, and they've got to make sure that they're ready to go. Yeah,
I think one of my favorite quotes from the pressers on Tuesday was head coach Sean Payton saying, like, I've never been in the visitors' locker room. Kind of just like that shock moment, right? And, there's certain things you didn't think about, and I think when you look at this matchup, you've seen other coaches kind of go back, and they almost like muscle memory kicks in a little bit, and they kind of turn down one hallway, and they're kind of like, hold up, I need to go this way. So he kind of joked about that, about, never really being in the visitors' locker room. But this is going to be a new experience, especially with New Orleans, hosting the Super Bowl and all the renovations they did. So it is a different environment for Peyton to go into. And it's also Thursday night football. It's prime time, the first primetime game for the Broncos this season. And Vance Joseph spoke about that on Tuesday, saying, you know, there is that extra motivation, that extra layer of just push for these guys because you are the only game that's on. All eyes are on you. A lot of family comes to this game. I know, you know, Payton had said that his wife had correlated friends and family to come to this game. So when you have all eyes on you, what kind of motivation does that give you, especially when you're trying to really get that fourth win, really rally, really get after a rookie quarterback, and really try to take a very powerful crowd noise out of this game?
Yeah, Sean did say if you haven't heard from him yet about tickets, you're out of luck. So hopefully, I don't know if anyone out there, you haven't heard from him. So that was, I thought, funny. But yeah, I think there's two things here. Maybe we get to like the importance of the game in a second, but like from a Thursday night perspective, I do think even Sunday night football, I know guys are watching, but a lot of the times, like, especially us or like players, like after a game, you're going out to, we're working, but they're going out to dinner and like you're either celebrating a win or you're looking ahead to.
We go out to dinner in club, press box. So.
Club press box. Yeah. It's crazy. They got apples and sometimes little
oranges
sandwiches. Yeah.
Wild.
Those oranges. Save on the fruit budget. If you take those home, there's a lot of those left over. Anybody needs an orange after the game.
We got you covered.
I think I can share this on the podcast. After the game, well, not after the game. Yeah, after the game. I went home and it wasn't this week. It was after the win over the Raiders. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I'm going to have a victory old fashioned, like a cocktail.
Oh.
And I was looking for an orange. And I was like, oh, I don't have an orange. And I was like, I'm going to run to the grocery store and get an orange so I can, because there's one a couple blocks from me. I'm going to go down, get an orange so that I can have an old fashioned.
Right.
And the grocery store was closed. And so I was like,
rude.
Okay, well, now I can't have an old fashioned.
Sad.
So I just drank regular bourbon instead. But
I like that didn't
it didn't deter me. No, I'm persistent. It's one of my best qualities. But then I was thinking, like, should I just start taking press box oranges to fuel my old-fashioned habit?
I mean, look, you can't. They're just there. They're just there. They're meant for us. And then we go on the road, and sometimes I think it's fair game. I think it's fair.
Yeah.
Game.
If the catering company is listening, you didn't hear this.
Well, we appreciate you. Yeah. And the oranges.
Yeah, I feel like the orange. I can take an orange. I'll just say I'll eat the orange. I'm taking the orange to eat the orange.
You do realize that this conversation now warrants you to tweet what fruit selection is in the press box in New Orleans, right?
I'm not going to take an orange back from New Orleans. That's crazy.
That's a New Orleans old fashioned. I mean, I think if you get the win.
Ooh. That could be. I often don't see oranges in the press box.
I'm just saying, this warrants a report
and
on Twitter.
Are the oranges?
The people are going to want
Are the oranges there pregame?
I think so. At least in our press box.
I don't know. Anyways,
I just feel like I feel like this warrants.
Maybe I'll get an orange. Okay, maybe if they win and I see an orange, I'll bring an orange back. I don't know that I'm going to want an old-fashioned at 4 a.m. when I get back from New Orleans, but maybe Friday afternoon or something. Maybe a happy hour. Anyway, what was I talking about? Something about
talking about the importance of the game of Thursday night football and the added motivation that this moment does give to this team when they're trying.
How did I get on oranges? Oh, the press box at the dinner. Got it. Yeah, I remember now. It's late.
Rails.
It's late.
Off the rails.
So anyway, we're up there working in club press box. Players are out to dinner. I think sometimes like Sunday night football, maybe you're not watching as closely.
Yeah.
Like, it's just kind of on. If you play Monday night or Thursday night, and I know Thursday night football sometimes gets some flack in terms of like
excitement and things like that.
Yeah, like Al Michaels is sometimes a little annoyed at the quality of the football game. But a couple of weeks ago, you had a great Thursday night football game. So hopefully we're in. Well, actually, I'd take a blowout. But if you're in for a great one, that'd be fun as well.
You have to shout out Miguel Gurwitz and Orlando Cantud, who did the Spanish for Thursday night football as well.
Wow, get some content with them.
You know? Got to shout out my guys.
That's true. But playing on Thursday night, everybody watches you. Yeah. Everybody's paying attention. I say this in all seriousness. I think it can impact end of season awards.
Yeah.
That's why I'm kind of bummed if Pat Surtain does not end up playing, that like he doesn't have a chance to show out, because I think a lot of people ended up seeing that pick six. But like Like if
this is prime time.
But if he was on Thursday Night Football and made a play, like that could be a key moment in his like a defensive player of the year type campaign. I think back to 2020, and I say this with like all sorts of love in my heart. Bradley Chubb was one of my favorite guys to cover. He was great.
Yeah.
Like he had a big night on Thursday Night Football. I think he had 2.5 sacks of, must have been Sam Darnold. And I think he only ended up with 6.5 sacks on the season, but the voters must have seen, and players must have seen, like, or fans or whoever, must have seen how well he played against the Jets because he made the Pro Bowl that year.
Yeah.
And it was like that one big performance made a huge deal. And certainly in terms of quote unquote narrative and all that, like if Bo Nix goes out on Thursday Night Football and has a great night and like takes a step forward, the conversation around Bo,
it leaps much farther than it would like in a regular game.
Than a game that's on CBS at 2:05 when there's other games going on, or maybe like most of the nation has Commanders, Ravens, and you just have Broncos, Chargers, or whatever, you know, like
depending on where you are.
So this is an opportunity, and granted, the narrative doesn't really matter ultimately, but like Zach Allen is a guy who's had a great season. If he goes out and has a couple sacks on Thursday Night Football, nationally, do you start saying this guy should be a Pro Bowler or this guy should be an All-Pro? Like, I know it matters in that standpoint. So, guys should go out, have a day, put on a performance, and hopefully it gets you a win because it is a really big game.
Yeah, and Vance Joseph touched on that when he said, like, it's an opportunity for these guys to show everyone who they are as players, what they bring to the table, especially on this defense that's been playing lights out the past few weeks. Obviously, they faced some adversity a little bit of the last two games, but if people could see, like you said, the effectiveness of Zach Allen, Jonathan Cooper, even Justin Sternad, and all these guys kind of coming in, Nick Bonito,
Riley Moss,
like all these things, like it's a different conversation when you are talking about this defense. Because, you know, you kind of see some of the headlines and it's like, are they a good defense? And it's like, you really haven't been watching because they are a good defense. But these primetime games really do help with that to kind of push, you know, you hate to say it, but to push the narrative, the storylines, or like you said, just for those end of the year awards for everyone to kind of see that this team has some really good talent.
Yeah. And listen, it's important. I know it's important to guys that like when they make Pro Bowls or they get all pros and it impacts contract stuff. Like, I'm not pretending that stuff doesn't matter. I don't think it's necessarily fair that your performance in primetime games can sometimes dictate that, but I don't think there's a doubt that it does. And so, yeah, it'd be great if, you know, can Cortland Sutton go out there and make a couple plays in prime time? Like he had 10 touchdowns last year, didn't make the Pro Bowl, and I know that was frustrating to him.
He had a nice one-handed catch touchdown against the Chargers. Had that been on prime time, even though that was, I would think that was the top play on ESPN the following day. I did see that. Yeah, we were eating lunch, and I looked up and I said, "Go Court," because that's a big deal. I'm just saying
that is a big deal.
Yeah, that one-handed touchdown.
And our dear friend Nicole is also, I think, in the shot, right?
Yeah, she was just in the corner. I told her, like, your top one. She's top play.
Top two and not two.
Yeah, exactly.
But obviously primetime's fun. You get more camera angles, more highlights. There's more attention. So and there's no more games until Sunday. So if you win, you're the only thing people are talking about Friday.
Yeah.
You're the only thing people are talking about pregame.
Yeah.
It is exciting from that standpoint, and you get to enjoy the win a little bit, and then kick back, watch the game Sunday with your friends and family before you get back at it. I will say, just in terms of the importance of this game, you did so much work to get from 0-2 back to 3-2, and you had the loss to the Chargers. I get that. As I said Monday, I think this is a good Chargers team. I think they're going to be in the playoff hunt. But so are the Broncos, and it's important to, like, I feel like good teams find ways to not let one loss become two. And can you jump right back on the winning bandwagon? You've got a tough stretch coming up in a few weeks with like Baltimore, Kansas City, and Atlanta all in a row. Can you find a way to get a win here? Maybe you get one next week against Carolina at home, get back to winning at home, and find a way to build a little cushion, build a little breathing room, put yourself in the thick of that AFC playoff race. Because if you lose Thursday, you're like looking back. You've climbed that mountain from 0-2. You're looking back up at it again.
Yeah.
And every win matters. You got to bank wins when you can. And not that it won't be an extremely difficult challenge, but it does feel to me like a game that the Broncos absolutely, if they go out and they play well defensively, kind of get back to that style that they've played all year.
Yep.
They don't turn the ball over on offense. They try to run the ball against a Saints front that is maybe a little bit worn down due to injuries. Like, you do all that and you just play good, clean football, you're going to have a really good chance at getting a win. And certainly I'd appreciate it because then people will be nicer in the YouTube comments.
And that's obviously your favorite part.
Matters.
That's what matters, your favorite part of the show. Well, we appreciate you guys listening to another edition of Altitude Advantage. We are hoping to have that dub day on a Friday this week. So looking forward to that. Obviously, the Broncos will head on the road for that Thursday night matchup against the New Orleans Saints. Again, first time they're facing them since 2020 and first time they're facing them in New Orleans since 2016. So I'm your host and team reporter, Elisa Hernandez. Across from me is our lead writer for DenverBroncos.com, Aric DiLalla, who is now going to be our mini chef over there trying to figure out what oranges are in the press box in New Orleans. You got us covered?
I'll do my best.
All right. He's going to do his best. So keep a lookout on his Twitter because he's going to be reporting live from Club Press Box in New Orleans. Caesar's Dome, special edition.